Yeah, my name is Russ Sapienza. I'm with the 40th Legislative District in Bellingham. I have two particular questions about two different issues. First, the state of mental health legislation. That's very important because we have so much homelessness down in Bellingham. Second is human life, and in particular, Washington State's attempt to codify abortionism as permanently enshrined in the Constitution. And I find that to be very dangerous.
To both of those issues, I think that you've correctly identified two big issues happening in the legislature. So I'm on the Housing Committee, and the Housing Committee has dealt in large part with a lot of the homelessness and mental health issues that we're dealing with. And if you talk to some of the folks that are dealing with these issues in Bellingham and downtown Bellingham especially, one of the things that they'll tell us is that we know a lot of the causes to these problems. And the causes oftentimes go to addiction issues, whether it's an imperfect relationship that sometimes causes sort of the catalyst for a drug addiction or an alcohol abuse issue. That is sort of one of the root causes for homelessness in Washington County. I think most of the folks that deal with it directly there would say overwhelmingly that's one of the primary, if not the primary, causes. And so I think one of the things that we need to do is empower our local nonprofits, local organizations that are best equipped to deal with those issues. But it's also an overall statewide issue. So there were some investments that I was supportive of in our state budget to promote more mental health counselors, for example, for students that are struggling with the pandemic and a lot of those issues. But this is going to be an ongoing issue. Here's what I don't think is the answer to that issue as well that I fought against this session. One of the ideas was to provide houses to all of those that are in encampments or are homeless right now. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. One of the ideas, however, that I provided an amendment for was to say if we're going to do that, we need to make sure there's some sort of accountability measure regarding drug and alcohol abuse so that the people that are experiencing homelessness can get the help that they need. And unfortunately, some of those amendments were not supported by the majority party. And so I think that, again, there needs to be some form of checks and balances and accountability for us to do the humane thing, which is helping these people experiencing homelessness to get to those root causes and then to empower individuals to go and to get a job, to have a family, and to move back into a state of normalcy that many of them haven't experienced for a long time. Now, to the second issue, I think you're referencing, I think the bill was 5909, which was a bill that expanded abortion scope to not just physicians. So in the 1990s, there was a referendum that expanded or sort of codified abortion, as you mentioned, in the state of Washington. And one of the interesting things about the language of that was that it was specific to allow physicians and physicians only to perform abortions. Well, unfortunately, in this past legislative session, that got expanded, not just to physicians, but to allow advanced registered nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and it's about 33 other medical providers falling within a certain scope of practice to be able to perform abortions. And we proposed several amendments, some of us, to address some of those issues. For example, we proposed an amendment saying that clearly in the case of gross negligence, that is to say if a nurse or a nurse's assistant or something like that performed essentially a botched abortion, that those individuals should be sued for gross negligence. And even that amendment was voted down. So that's sort of the area we're talking about. There was another amendment to allow, it would have been the Department of Health, to at least go through those different medical providers, because one of the things we don't know about right now is whether somebody like a dentist would technically fall within the very broad statute of the bill that was passed. Could a dentist perform an abortion? And so one of our amendments was at least to say, let's let the Department of Health go through those categories and figure out exactly who could or couldn't fit within the statute. And even that amendment was voted down. So that sort of, I think, shows, unfortunately, the place that we're in the state. We've moved very far, even from the idea of a safe, legal, and rare, and all the way to something that is now, I think, going to be very unsafe, very frequent, and at times dangerous to women as well. So I'm very disappointed in the legislature's piece of legislation that came out of this session.